In Captain America, the first Avenger, we meet Steve Rogers as he's trying to enlist for the army in World War II. And he's like 4 foot nothing, 90 pounds, they won't let him go. Luckily, he meets the scientist, played by Stanley Tucci, and Stanley Tucci's like, you want to kill some Nazis? And Steve's like, well, I don't like bullies, which is apparently the right answer. Because next thing you know, he's being injected with super soldier serum, which is like pretty self-explanatory. And there's this great scene where little CGI'd Chris Evans goes into this metal tube and comes out as Captain America, but it's just like regular Chris Evans who just looks like that. It's really great. So then Steve runs off to rescue Bucky, the love of his life, from all these Nazis, and this one really bad Nazi, the Red Skull. And the Red Skull is using the Tesseract to power all these like German super weapons. And that's important because now we know, like a million movies later, that the Tesseract is an Infinity Stone. So the only way to get rid of the Tesseract is to like crash his plane into the Arctic and sacrifice himself. So he does that and everyone thinks he's dead, but then he wakes up like 70 years later in New York to find out that he didn't get rid of the Tesseract and he didn't get rid of the Nazis. So he ends this movie like 0 for 2, but at least he looks good now.
So The Avengers is the 6th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is something I wish I would have known before I saw it because I'd only seen the Iron Man movies and I was like, what is happening? And it came out in 2012 and it was directed by Joss Whedon. But so basically The Avengers starts off and you really need to know about the Thor stuff because Thor's brother Loki steals this Tesseract thing and then he enslaves a bunch of people, and then most of the Avengers is spent like gathering up all the superheroes. And there's like the Hulk, who's hot Mark Ruffalo, Thor, who's Loki's brother, the Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, and then a bunch of other people. And then they basically spend the movie just like arguing over what to do with Loki, and then there's this giant battle in New York City, and it's really confusing if you haven't seen the first 5 films. That's all.
Alright, so I'm here to talk about Thor the Dark World, which is unfortunately the Thor the Dark World of Marvel movies. You shouldn't be watching it, but there is one thing you need to know about this movie, and that is the Reality Stone. Ignore this really bad handwriting, but this is what the stone looks like. It is a very important stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones. This one, it kind of has like a portal-like ability where you can just sort of jump between worlds, and we find out in a post-credits scene that the Collector, played by Benicio del Toro, who also shows up in the first Guardians movie, is in possession of it, or at least he's the last person that we know of. So, Thanos in Infinity War, he wants all these Infinity Stones, he's going to need to get this one too, and this one would, I mean, if he had it, it would have some pretty cool powers, so that's all you need to know. Do not watch this movie again unless you really, really want to torture people, or put some kids to sleep while you're babysitting. So yeah.
So Guardians of the Galaxy all starts in 1988 with this kid named Peter Quill. He gets abducted by pirate aliens. 26 years later, after they raise him, he escapes with this orb. Then he just kind of bounces around the universe trying to sell the orb. He picks up like a raccoon, a tree, a woman named Gamora, and this like buff guy named Drac, and they're like all have interest in the orb. They try and wrestle it away from various evil sources. In the end, it all ends with an explosion and the tree covers everyone and they're okay. And the orb is put into safe hands. And that's the movie.
This is Avengers Age of Ultron. I just watched this last night. It's fresh in my head. Tony Stark, Iron Man, creates a new form of artificial intelligence that if you've ever seen a sci-fi movie, you know that it's immediately going to go wrong and everything's going to turn on you, as artificial intelligence often does. So that does. The AI's name is ULTRON. He decides he's going to kill all the Avengers and then eventually destroy all of humanity. Turns out the only way to defeat him is by creating another AI that's exactly the same but somehow different, using gemstones, which is somehow connected to Infinity Stones. Anyway, so they defeat him and all that happens. I think the best plot summary of the entire movie is given in the movie by Hawkeye, who goes, the city is flying, we're fighting an army of robots, and I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense. And so that happens. Captain America goes to train more people, and then at the end there's Thanos, who says he'll do it himself.
So in Captain America Civil War, most of the plot points are not particularly important, except that the emergence of Captain America's old friend from the 40s, Bucky Barnes, is now an agent of an evil organization, and they're is a fight between two groups of Avengers over the government regulation of superheroes. There are a bunch of new characters introduced, most importantly the new Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and Black Panther. At the end of the movie, Iron Man and Captain America end up fighting, but nobody dies, and then they are all friends at the end of the movie, setting us perfectly for Infinity Wars.
Dr. Stephen Strange is a hyper-talented, pompous neurosurgeon living in New York. He's in a very horrible car crash where he loses the ability to operate because his hands are essentially destroyed. In an attempt to seek treatment, he travels to Taj in Nepal to study under someone called the Ancient One. There he learns to control time and space and learns about different planes such as the astral plane. While there, he also is studying a lot in the library. It turns out that a defected student turned sorcerer called Caecilius attacked Taj, stole pages from one of the texts to summon a creature called Dormammu that lives in the dark dimension where time does not exist. There are 3 buildings on planet Earth designed to prevent attacks from this dimension, such as Dormammu's place. They're called sanctums. The sanctum in London is destroyed. Whilst trying to save the sanctum in New York, Doctor Strange acquires the cape of levitation. A bunch of bad shit happens. Turns out they have a big fight. And in the end, Doctor Strange uses Mordo and Wong and the Eye of Agamotto, which is technically an Infinity Stone, as the Time Stone, to trick Dormammu into a time loop, and he's so annoying that they just give up and everything's great.
Alright, so in Thor Ragnarok, Thor loses 3 things. His hair, his hammer, and his eyeball. But he also meets Tessa Thompson, and she's good. And he reunites with Loki, and they resolve their sibling stuff. And he saves all of Asgard from his evil sister, who destroys the planet. And then they leave, and they go into the galaxy, and then in the galaxy, they meet Guardians.
Black Panther is by far the coolest Marvel movie. It's about the hidden African kingdom of Wakanda. Its king, the Black Panther, is T'Challa, who battles his cousin Eric for control of the kingdom and its most valuable natural resource, vibranium. Because of vibranium, Wakanda is way ahead of the rest of the world in terms of technological evolution. They have weapons for defense. They have transportation. They have energy. T'Challa's sister Shuri is basically Q from the James Bond movies. She's able to fashion new weapons, virtually drive cars, and heal people from terrible wounds. After battling for the future of Wakanda, T'Challa bests Killmonger and introduces Wakanda and its possibilities of vibranium to the wider world. Before the film ends, Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, shows up, and what would appear to have a huge impact on Infinity War, he is healed by Shuri, and then what happens next, we don't know.
Avengers Infinity War is a movie that is 10 years in the making. It's been billed as the biggest crossover event in history. There's only one name that you have to know about, is Thanos, and the thing about Thanos is he's collecting Infinity Stones. We've been seeing Infinity Stones all across the Marvel Universe. The Space Stone, which was first released in Captain America with Red Skull having it, it's now in Thanos' control. Benicio del Toro has the Reality Stone. His character, the Collector, was given to him by Thor. I'm pretty sure Thanos has that already. The Power Stone is on Xandar after the Guardians removed it from that weird dude, Ronan the Accuser, in the Guardians movie. The Fourth Stone is the Mind Stone, which is literally on Vision's forehead, so Thanos is gonna probably get that and he's probably dead. Doctor Strange has the Fifth Stone, which is a Time Stone, and it's on this thing right here. Basically, Thanos is gonna get all these stones and kill the Avengers. That's probably what's gonna happen in Infinity Wars. Go watch it. Don't spoil it for other people.
There's a bunch of videos telling you everything that happened in Infinity War. You should watch those because they're longer and more in depth. I'm going to talk about one specific scene, which is right at the end. So after Thanos has already gotten 4 stones, he comes to Wakanda to try to get the 5th from Vision's head. Wanda and the other people in Wakanda end up trying to kill Vision so that Thanos can't get the stone and snap and kill everyone on Earth and the entire universe. Thanos, having the Time Stone, reverses that, gets the Infinity Stone from Vision's head, puts it in his glove, and right as he's about to snap, out of nowhere, an Avenger, Thor, comes in, boom, right into his chest. You think the day is saved, and he's just all weak and then my man over here goes, "You should have gone for the head." Snaps, kills everyone. Things are crazy. I think the raccoon is still alive. Shouts to Bradley Cooper. Shallow should have won an Oscar. I think it did. Anyway, Infinity War, everyone dies, setting up our people for Endgame, now in theaters. Go check it out.
So Ant-Man and the Wasp takes place before Infinity War, where we find Scott Lang stuck at home on house arrest until Hank Pym, who's the original Ant-Man, and his daughter, Hope, the Wasp, break him out in order for them all to save Hope's mother, who's been stuck in the quantum realm for decades. What is the quantum realm, you might ask? Well, I don't even think the film's writers really know the answer to that question, but it's the most important part of the movie and probably what's going to have the greatest impact on Endgame. It's essentially an alternate dimension that you can reach by shrinking down to a subatomic level, sure. But so basically they find a way to locate her down there and bring her back up to the surface. Happy ending. Until the after credits, we see them perform an experiment that sends Scott back down to the quantum realm, and on the surface, the whole Pym family gets dusted by Thanos' snap, which is honestly pretty brutal because we just spent 2 hours like watching them finally get back together from being years apart, but Scott is left floating around in the quantum realm at the end.
Captain Marvel is set in 1995, and we meet a Kree warrior named Vers, played by Brie Larson, and she's fighting these Skrulls and ends up being captured and then escapes to Earth, where she meets Nick Fury long before he assembles any of the other Avengers. And so they like bro it up for a while she tries to figure out all these like missing memories that she has, like mostly of Annette Bening. And it turns out that she was a fighter pilot named Carol Danvers, and she flew and crashed a special fighter jet that contained the Tesseract, and she like absorbed all its power and became like super powerful. So then when she gets her memories back, she finds out that the Krees were actually the bad guys, and so she protects the Skrulls from them and like Ronan the Accuser, who we know from Guardians of the Galaxy. And so anyway, she beats them and like flies off to protect the rest of the universe, but she gives Nick Fury a special pager to call her if he needs her, which he hits at the end of Infinity War, which sets up her introduction to Endgame. And there's also this like alien cat that, sorry, are we out of time? Apologies to the Florkin, which is definitely an important and meaningful part of the story.